This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Welcome back to the Short Shift podcast, hosted by Keepan Carlson. I'm your host, Ben Burnett. Joining me as always, Lewis, Ezekiel, and Lewis. It's a sad day today. It's the first episode after the inaugural Battle of the Buds, and I guess it's only sad for one of us because I must admit defeat. My hat off to you, my friend. You bested me in the Cupful Tier 1.
Well, I appreciate it. All the credit obviously goes to last day fantastic performances by JVR and Jordan Stahl. I think I said in our chat that the only way I was going to be able to pull it off with your game advantage was if JVR went ham on Vitek Vanacek in that noon game, and it all came to pass. You've been very gracious. Listening to the play-by-play on the stat attack from John Newhold, had my heart going. I was reliving the whole ups and downs of the whole experience. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad I came out with a win, but it was very stressful, and I am much happier now that we can, talk openly about our fantasy teams here in the aftermath.
I mean, talk openly. Whatever you say, I'm still keeping my cards close to the vest especially now that I'm a game behind you. Even though, Lewis, I'm beating you in points for. So, small victory really for you. It's that's the more meaningful one in my opinion. And we're gonna move on into the headline section because I have that power to just transition into a conversation I enjoy much more. Although, Lewis, you're gonna start us off with a headline tonight.
Yeah, so we'll start where we started for our last several shows, and we'll try and move through it as quick as we can here. But the Flyers game here on Tuesday night against Washington was postponed. And we'll have to keep an eye on how things develop moving forward. This obviously is terrible for JVR, who is one of the hottest sticks in the game. Hopefully he does not lose his step or his spot in the lineup during this break. I think most of these top-level guys you got to hold on to, including I know you've got Konechny, and you're going to hang on to him here. A more interesting case maybe would be Joel Farabee, 6 goals and 12 points through 13 games. A lot of kind of empty games in there, some empty calories, and then some really heavy hitting 3-point games, a 3-goal game, a 3-assist game. He's on a 38-goal, 76-point pace. Has he been too good to drop, in your opinion, during this off time?
Well, it's interesting. You said the thing about Van Riemsdyk's deployment being good and how you hope he doesn't lose it. But honestly, he's doing it without great deployment, and so is Joel Farabee, unless you assume that these two are kind of the unheralded superstars in Philadelphia, which I don't think either of us would argue they are. I think, it depends on the size of your league. Like in a 10 or 12 team league, I think that you're probably streaming out Joel Farabee. But in a 14 team league, it's pretty tough to stream him out. 12 points in 13 games is nothing to sneeze at. I'd probably be holding on if I had him in a deeper league.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that Farabee, as long as that line is hot and clicking, unless I'm in a desperation situation, I'm not anxious to ditch Joel Farabee. But of course, if it comes down to it, and it's the difference between winning or losing a week, we don't get that many weeks this season. So, just evaluate your own team as needed. He's a tweener for me. He could go, he could stay. I'd like to keep him if I can, but if I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting a victory, I'm willing to let him go.
Well, and we've talked a lot about waiting until you have more information to make decisions this season with all the cancellations, but even that advice is starting to prove a little difficult to follow. I dropped Christian Dvorak to get in an extra stream, hoping to beat you in Battle of the Buds. Still proved futile. Then he played a game on Monday night, and then they rescheduled another game for Arizona. I thought I was dropping him, and I wasn't going to get him for 6 nights, so why bother keeping him? And here he is back playing again on Friday. I think I'll handle that one okay, but man, trying to game the schedule is harder than it's ever been this year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I speak for myself. I streamed in Brian Elliott to get his start in the game against Washington tonight, only to find that it was canceled. It seems like whoever I pick up for streamers is just running into the brick wall of postponements here. So I'm very sympathetic to your plight.
Well, let's talk about more players running into brick walls, and we're going to hop over to Columbus, another city that we've talked about quite a bit the last few weeks. Of course, the Patrik Laine benching of Monday evening that shook the hockey world. That honeymoon between Laine and Torts did not seem to last very long, about as long as anyone would have predicted, I guess. So Laine was sat on the back half of Monday's game. Twitter sleuths were pretty sure it was because he missed up an assignment on a goal, but reports Tuesday night say that Laine was actually benched for cussing out an assistant coach. This comes after he scored 3 goals in his first 3 games. He did not score one last night. He's been playing 18 minutes or more prior to that, though. There's no way to know, though, where the Columbus merry-go-round is really going to wind up next. So I think you're kind of stuck holding Laine, and I'm optimistic still. I think that talent-wise, he's obviously producing. I would consider buying if you could buy super low on somebody who's crazy jittery about him, but only if you're able to buy low. Meanwhile, though, Jack Roslovic, trade throw-in is now turning into Tortorella's favorite toy. He's been line 1, power play 1, playing with Laine prior to the benching in the last game, and he has 7 points in his first 7 games as a Blue Jacket, including that highlight reel goal Monday night, win the game winner. He's hitting a little bit, but one thing I don't like about Roslovic, he's not really shooting much. He's got 10 shots through 7 games. He's not going to keep up this point per game pace, but I do like that power play usage and the uptick in minutes the last couple games. So I think he's a must-own in deeper leagues, and I'm definitely watch listing or streaming on heavy schedule weeks. That's kind of where I'm at with the Columbus boys right now.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Roslovic, as long as he's going to be this hot and get the nice deployment, yes, we're not getting the shots that we're hoping to see, but yeah, as long as he's pulling down those points, I think you got to hold on to him. And for Laine and Torts, I think they're both sort of feeling each other out. I hope that things will calm down as they both sort of get used to each other a little bit, but you never know. Torts is the kind that can seem to hold a grudge sometimes, so we'll have to see how this plays out. But my hope is they're just kind of nipping at each other as they are getting used to functioning in the same environment as one another.
Well, Lewis, why don't you tell us about the other half of that trade in Winnipeg?
Yeah, absolutely. We're finally going to get to see Pierre-Luc Dubois debut in Winnipeg here. Not exactly the breakdown that we wanted to see. We're very used to seeing this 2 heavy top lines for Winnipeg, but they've shuffled things around a little bit. We're looking at a line with Kopp and Scheifele and Ehlers, Vesalainen, Stastny, Wheeler, and Connor, PLD, and Trevor Lewis. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works out. I think a lot of people also were hoping to see PLD replace Stastny potentially on that top power play, but right now it looks like he's holding its spot. It'll be Wheeler, Stastny, Scheifele, Morrissey, and Connor as per usual. And then PLD, Ehlers, Kopp, Perreault, and Pionk on that second line. Some real firepower certainly on that second power play. They're just not going to get the minutes, as Brian and Elon mentioned on Sunday.
Yeah, I really like this for Andrew Copp still, though he hasn't been quite as hot as he was when we were speaking about him recently on shows. But otherwise, it's kind of a bummer for Scheifele. Definitely not into this for Blake Wheeler, who's been struggling at even strength, and I don't like that. I don't like that split for him, but we'll see how these lines go tonight, and I would imagine that there's a short leash considering it's not like anything is probably set in stone here. So keep an eye on Game Day Lines on Twitter and follow us at ShortShiftsKK, and we'll keep you up to date on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And after a quick break here, we'll be back with some hot and cold streaks.
The economy is made up of real people doing real stuff, and it affects everything. Which you obviously know since you're a real person doing real stuff. Marketplace is here to help you get smart about everything beyond the what of the day's business and economic news. We dig into the how and the why with the real people driving our economy. From big tech and interest rates to small businesses and what's happening at the Fed, Marketplace breaks it all down so you don't have to. Listen to Marketplace wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Short Shifts podcast. Lewis, we are going to talk about hot and cold streaks, and you are going to walk us through a couple of these. Who's been hot? Who's been cold? Give us the juice here.
So I got a couple guys here who are playing almost identically. It'll be really interesting to decide which one you might prefer over the other. So we'll talk about Anthony Cirelli and Nick Schmaltz here. Cirelli's got 3 goals and 3 assists in his last 5 games for 6 total points. Only 10 shots, which makes me a little leery. Still getting power play 2 minutes, so down in kind of the 30% power play time on ice range. And his ice time is actually down a little bit overall from last year. It's hard to dislike guys on Tampa Bay, but it does seem like a bit of an unsustainable streak. Tampa Bay plays Thursday, Saturday this week, so make sure that you can fit him in the lineup before you go out and potentially add him. Right kind of on the same line, not the same line, but on the same pace as we've seen from Cirelli is another guy with 6 points in 5 games and 9 shots instead of 10, and that's Nick Schmaltz. I don't know. I'm starting to think I like him maybe playing with Connor Garland and Clayton Keller and getting about 50% of the power play time. Just a hair more than I like Cirelli playing with Johnson and Killorn with that limited power play time on ice. Between the two guys, Nick Schmaltz and Cirelli with pretty identical profiles in the last few games, who would you rather stream in?
Oh, it's Schmaltz for me, and it's the exact reason you said, playing between Garland and Keller. Brian and Elon talked about Garland the other night, and I'm totally on board. I think that he is having his breakout season. If you picked him up in your leagues, you're going to be happy, and I'd be holding as long as I can. Nick Schmaltz looks really good, and he's in that spot that's the reason why I picked Christian Dvorak up, because he was centering Keller and Garland. Now Schmaltz is in that spot at even strength. They're both obviously on the power play, but I wish that I had Schmaltz right now. I'd prefer him to Christian Dvorak, even though Dvorak's been even hotter.
And remember, too, this might have looked like not such a great pickup for this week, but they did get that game added back against St. Louis, so they're going to play a couple times here later in the week when it seemed like we weren't going to see any of the Coyotes again until Saturday. So, again, check and see if you can fit them in the lineup. But I think I'm with you. I like, as I said before, I think I like Nick Schmaltz between the two.
All right, who else you got for us this week?
All right, well, how about somebody that you added towards the end of our Battle of the Buds Tier 1 Cupful matchup and who really scared me quite a bit, who's Cody Glass. 4 points in the last 5 games, so not quite as on fire as the other two, but he's been getting over 50% of power play time on ice in 3 of those last 5 games. He hasn't dipped below 45% in any of them. Looking at Cupful.com and looking at the delta between Cupful ownership and Yahoo ownership, I think we tend to see Cupful being ahead of the curve. And yes, more players are rostered because it is a deeper league than a lot of these leagues. But, there is an 86% delta between Cupful rosters and Yahoo rosters. So 91% owned in Cupful and 5% in Yahoo. I think he should be owned in more leagues. I think people should be running out to grab Cody Glass here.
I mean, I'm into him, and I'm happy to hear you say that because obviously I've got him on my Cupful team now, and I hope he stays hot. But I'd really like to see him tick up above 13 minutes a game. That's a tough one. Obviously, when you're getting 2+ minutes a night on that Vegas top power play unit, that makes up for 13 minutes ATOI. But he's somebody who he's on my radar in shallower leagues, and if I need a stream, I think that you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, I definitely have him a slot below Cirelli and Schmaltz, but certainly wanted to bring him up since he's on a bit of a streak here for us.
Ooh, I don't know. That's a tough one between Cirelli and Glass. I guess I'd go Cirelli just because he's been better long term, whereas I could see Glass coming down, but definitely Nick Schmaltz of the 3.
If Glass loses that power play deployment that he's been getting, I think he certainly dips below where we see Cirelli.
Oh, I mean, 13 minutes and off the top unit is not rosterable.
No good. Yeah, I'm with you. Bit of a cold streak here. Let's talk about Teuvo Teravainen. He's had 0 points in 4 games since returning from a COVID protocol absence and was pointless in another 2 games before that, so bringing him to 0 points in the last 6. I took a look at him because there was somebody asking a question about an interesting trade involving him. Right now, obviously a very small sample size, but he's had unsustainably low on-ice shooting percentage as well as IPP. Shooting right, while he's on the ice, his team is shooting around 5%, 5.5%. He's only been in on one of the 3 even strength goals that's been scored while he's on the ice. This is all 5v5. He's got about 5 expected goals for and only 3 actual goals for at 5-on-5. So, we could expect to see an uptick there. I think he's going to start regressing to the mean here before long. Personally, as a Jordan Staal owner, I'm loving him ceding his power play 1 spot to Staal for now. I don't think that'll last once Teravainen gets back on the right track. I think that they would prefer to see him on that top unit. So just keep your eyes peeled. This might be a good time to go after Teravainen if his owners are getting frustrated with him, because the numbers do seem to indicate that we're going to see him get back to getting on the scoreboard here probably sooner rather than later. I would say if I'm panic metering here on Teuvo, I would be maybe a 2 on my panic meter. How about you?
Yeah, I was going to say 3, but I think that makes sense. He talked about it when he came back from COVID that he didn't feel right away. He didn't feel like he had the game, that he was paced. He didn't feel like he was meeting the flow of the game, I guess, if I were to say that like a normal person. And so, yeah, I think that that's pretty normal given what we've learned about this virus, is that it kind of messes you up in a lot of ways. It can mess with your conditioning. And so I would expect that Teuvo gets his shit together here and does fine. All right, Lewis, we're going to hop into the line combo section of the podcast. I'm going to burn through a couple of line changes and talk about a couple power plays, and then I'm going to talk about a couple goaltending deployment situations that I find interesting. First, in St. Louis, we've seen a power play shakeup for the Blues. On the top unit, we are seeing Sundqvist, O'Reilly, Perron, Hoffman, and Falk. And then on the second unit, Schwartz, Schenn, Kyrou, Krug, and Dunn. They're actually being listed in reverse order, but the second unit is seeing most of the power play time. Given that O'Reilly and Perron are on there, I kind of think of those as the de facto number 1 fellas anyway. It is nice to see Kyrou and Vince Dunn get some opportunity. I think that they have, Kyrou obviously is the waiver wire player of last week, so he's probably rostered in most leagues still. But Dunn, it's nice to see getting a little bit of run here, and as they try and juice his trade value. I am starting to believe in Justin Falk. The peripherals are really back for the first time in a while, and the team's been really good when he's on the ice. His pairing with Torrey Krug looks quite good. So I think he's going to be rosterable all year in 12 and 14 team leagues. I think the main thing here is Hoffman might finally get that opportunity to turn the corner playing with O'Reilly on the top power play. I wouldn't buy low, though, because who knows? Obviously, they're not married to him playing there, so he could be shuffled off. But I don't mind adding him back in leagues where he's been dropped to free agency. It just kind of depends. If you want to ask us if Mike Hoffman stands out on your waiver wire, shoot us a tweet at ShortShiftsKK. And then the second power play shakeup that I like to see is in Boston, where they're going to go 5 forwards on the power play as of their most recent practice. Pasternak, Bergeron, Marchand, Nick Ritchie, almost said Brett again, and David Krejci. Sucks for me as a Matt Grzelcyk owner who is so excited to see him come off the IR+, but I'm also, as a hockey fan, just really interested to see what a 5-forward power play does if they actually get a chance to run it that way. And if I'm a Nick Ritchie owner, oh my God, I feel like I just hit the lottery, because the man is not getting taken off of that unit. And if you picked him up in deeper leagues, you are loving life right now. So those are kind of my the two power play shakeups I was looking at. Anything you wanted to add, Lewis?
Well, just a couple things that I think are interesting. One is that they kept that Schenn, Schwartz, Kyrou line together with a couple defensemen to serve as that one end of the Blues power play, building a little bit off of the chemistry that group has had. As far as the 5 forwards go, like you said, love it as a hockey fan. Would love to see more teams try this out. Not a lot of teams have the opportunity to be able to put out some pretty skilled defensive players like Bergeron and Krejci. So you can kind of get away with maybe not having a defenseman out there, especially if they are, the type of offense only defenseman that we see in a lot of these power play situations. I'd love to see how it turns out. I hope they are very successful. I don't have any shares of these players, so I worry about it a little bit. I'm going up against Pasta and Bergeron next week, I think, so a little bit nervous, but I would be regardless of the situation. So I hope the 5-player power play or the 5-forward power play is successful and we see some more teams take it on.
We'll start in Dallas, where Jake Ettinger is starting his 3rd game out of 4, while sleepy Anton Khudobin gets benched for a 2nd straight game here. With tonight's game, we are seeing Ettinger... So Ettinger so far has been okay, 2 wins and a .915 save percentage through his 3 starts. 33 saves out of 35 in the last game against Chicago. I have to think that that's why he's getting the start again here, that most recent game. And considering it's just based off one strong game, I'm not ready to get overly excited about Jake Ettinger. But if you're a Khudobin owner, Lewis, are you getting nervous?
Ultimately, we know this is the result of Khudobin missing some practice time because he was not sharp on the alarm. I think eventually we're going to see him crawl back out of the doghouse for that. I don't think it's going to take much more than a bad outing from Ettinger or Khudobin getting in for a game, maybe on a back-to-back and performing nicely and, having this chance to get back in. So I am a little worried about it. I think it hurts in the short term. But as far as it being a long-term impact, I think Khudobin's going to be able to work his way back into the good graces here. We were talking about this earlier and we mentioned, eventually we're going to have Ben Bishop back in the mix here. And in all likelihood, Ettinger's going to be back down. So I'm not looking at this as a super long-term pickup. I did grab him in one of my leagues because I need some goalie help. Hopefully he has, he certainly is capable of putting together some nice outings here, taking advantage of Khudobin's mistake. But again, it's not for anything that was on the ice, and I think ultimately we'll see Khudobin take back over, probably to at least a 60-40, at least in my opinion.
I mean, I hear you on the Ettinger stuff. I'm not getting my hopes up too high, and I'm definitely only adding him if I need some goaltending help, and there are leagues where I definitely need some goaltending help, so he might get a spot start here or there. But I don't really see why, or a reason to believe that Anton Khudobin will necessarily win, take back the starting job with authority. He's never really done it before. The most games he's ever played in a season, 41, he did have a great save percentage that year and followed it up with a .930 in 30 games played last year. So obviously he has turned the career around a little bit more or been more consistent in Dallas, but I don't know. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever to see him struggle until Ben Bishop comes back.
Yeah, well, and like I said, I think Ettinger, at least in the short term, I think is a very appealing ad. Obviously Dallas plays a pretty tight defensive game. They're capable of scoring, especially when their power play gets out there. So I'm not trying to shy you away from picking them up in the long term. Just stay sharp, pay attention to when that tide starts to shift the other direction.
Well, to me, it's I guess I'm not even talking so much about Ettinger. I'm just talking about Khudobin, where it's I have no issue with riding with Ettinger right now as long as he's playing. It's more so that, if I'm a Khudobin owner, I'm a little bit nervous because I probably drafted him a little bit earlier than I would want my goaltender to be, starting to lose starts to a backup or to a rookie. But let's go over to LA next, where Cal Petersen is also getting the 3rd start in 4 games. Not only that, it's his 4th straight appearance after he spelled quick following a rough start in Vegas. Petersen's been great, a .925 over 6 games, though he has just 1 win. So we just talked about Ettinger in LA, or Ettinger in Dallas. How do you feel about Cal Petersen in relation? Are you more interested in Petersen?
So I think that Petersen is more likely possibly here to take over playing a longer set of games. Like I said, unlike the Ettinger situation, this is someone who is beating out his rival through his play. 6 games at a .925, that's a pretty good streak there. If you are in a league that puts a lot of emphasis on wins, like our Fantasy Hockey Trades League, I think he's a little bit less appealing because he's not going to be able to put together as many. There's just not as much run support for him as you're going to see Ettinger get in Dallas. But if you're in a league that counts saves, if you're in a league that is counting some of those rates, I do like Petersen better, I think.
I don't know that I agree with you. I think I prefer Ettinger short term and Petersen longer term. If you're going to be desperate for starts in April, then I would rather have Petersen. But in the short term, in pretty much any league, I think I'd just rather have Ettinger because I think he can be fine in rate stats and he's more likely to get me a win, despite the fact that Cal Peterson probably will have a better save percentage, but I could see his GAA being a big problem, and I don't see him getting me a ton of wins. So yeah, for me, it's more about like where you foresee an issue in your roster. If you're gonna need some starts in the short term, give me Jake Ettinger. But if you're somebody who's gonna need some starts down the road, I'll go Peterson because I think I agree with you that he's more likely to win out the starter's job. All right, Lewis, that's all we have time for today. For myself, Ben Burnett, I'm signing out of here. Lewis, why don't you take us home?
All right, will do. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at ShortShiftsKK, as well as Brian and Elon at Keeping Carlson, and Dave Benton of Stream Scheme at NHL Stream Scheme. Please visit the great sites that we research our episodes with at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, Roto World, Natural Stat Chick, and Cupful.com, which is just awesome. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.